Got
So
it.
today, I am thrilled to welcome an awesome guest to Unban Coolies. She's the Freedom to Read Program Director at PEN America. PEN America are leading initiatives to protect the rights of students to freely access literature in schools. Previously, she served as the Associate Director of Postsecondary Policy at a mission-driven education research organization called Research for Action. Her research centers students, educators, and school leaders' experiences in identifying strategies for reform and capturing emerging best practices, and strives to connect research to policy and program change. She holds a BA from the University of Pennsylvania and an MPA from the Fels Institute at the University of Pennsylvania, along with a certificate in politics. Wow, it is my pleasure to welcome Kasey Meehan.
Christopher, thank you for having me. Happy Sunday.
Without any more delay, let's dive straight into the questions.
All right.
During my childhood, I found great pleasure in poring over Dave Pickley's Captain Underpants series. The themes of humor and imagination showcased by George and Harold, two clever fourth graders as they navigated hilarious trials, and had a profounding impact on igniting my passion for reading. Can you recall a book that ignited a similar excitement for reading within you?
There's so many. I can remember Are You There, God? Is Me, Margaret has been in the news recently because of the movie, and Judy Blume had a documentary, and her work continues to be banned. But I can remember reading that book and several other Judy Blume books with my mom growing up, and just really falling in love with reading. And it's fun to kind of have the nostalgic of that moment of like being introduced to Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, also come full circle to have like the movie version of it too. So that's the top of mind for me. One of many though.
Next on my reading list is Luna by
Julie Ann Peters,
which is a young adult novel that has faced challenges and bans. The book about a transgender girl named Regan who narrates her sibling's story of transitioning from Liam to Luna. The novel addresses themes of identity, family, and acceptance, which has sparked discussions about the importance of providing diverse and inclusive literature to young readers, while also raising concerns among some individuals who find its content controversial. Is there a banned book that you're currently reading?
I loved Genderqueer, the memoir. I thought it was just a beautiful graphic novel, also about sort of representation and identity, and introducing different voices that we often don't see in our young adult and kid lit books. I've also read All Boys Are Blue and thought that was fantastic. Recently, I was able to see Elizabeth Acevedo, who is the author of Poet X, which is a young adult book that is also commonly banned, for her new upcoming book, which I'm currently reading, The Family Lore. So it'll be her first adult book. But yeah, there are just so many. I mean, The Hate You Give, Flamer by Mike Corrado. There's fantastic books everywhere. It's just a really alarming when, we're seeing that being threatened, particularly for students in public schools.
Let's dive into questions about your amazing organization, PEN America. Can you provide an overview of PEN America's stance on banned books and the importance of protecting the right to access diverse literary content?
Absolutely. Yeah. So PEN America is a national nonprofit. And so the broadest mission of the nonprofit is to celebrate and defend free expression. The way this shows up in the work that I do is thinking about the freedom to read. So how one element of free expression is one's freedom to read, one's freedom to learn, one's freedom to think. Those 2 years have been tracking book bans in public schools and the way in which book bans infringe upon a student's freedom to read. And also we're seeing the way in which it infringes upon like an author's like freedom to write and to share these books. So that's a piece of this component, but the freedom to read to us is, just so critical. And we see, think about public schools and libraries. Public libraries is so foundational to our democracy, and the way in which book bans, again, are really just threatening those foundational institutions, but also infringing upon one's right to freely access books and a diverse and inclusive and representative set of books as well.
What are some of the most common reasons cited for banning books, and how does PEN America address these challenges?
This is a layered question. So the challenges can look a little bit different and unique, and the way in which books are challenged can be different across kind of school districts and states and all of that. But, I think what's important is that parents and, community has always had a voice in public schools. They've always been an amazing partner. Parents have always been, such great partners to public school, like educators and administrators, representing sometimes on the board. So playing this like really critical role in supporting these institutions support their students and their student success. But what we see happening more and more is the way in which what used to traditionally happen when you could challenge a book is like a single individual would read a specific book and have a specific set of objections, and then have a conversation about that book and whether it was appropriate or not to be offered in, a student's classroom. And that would be like a discussion that would typically involve like parent to educator. But what we see happening now is the way in which coordinated groups and coordinated movements are proliferating book bans nationwide. And this looks like groups, submitting long lists of challenges to districts. This looks like individuals challenging long lists of books to districts to be challenged and removed. It also looks like districts making decisions to be in compliance with state legislation. So more and more we see the way in which state legislation is sitting as the driver behind book bans. And books can be challenged and removed for lots of different reasons. So oftentimes we see books challenged and removed for sexual content. We'll see books challenged and removed for, quote unquote, sexual content, but often we've seen the way in which terms like age inappropriateness and sexual content have also been conflated to mean other things. And sometimes these words are also used to target books that focus on LGBTQ plus themes or include LGBTQ plus, identities and characters in the books, books that talk about race and racism, books that feature characters of color. So there's a way in which they're being challenged under sort of one, under like, rhetoric that can be quite vague, but in reality, what we see is an overwhelming target of books feature these historically marginalized identities in books and that are available in public schools.
Have you noticed any emerging trends or new challenges regarding banned books?
I think that's a great one. So often, so one of the trends that we've been following is the way in which state legislation is playing a role in the removal of books in public schools. So this looks like legislation that is being passed at the state level and will prohibit the discussions of or the instruction of sexual identity and gender identity. It could prohibit, critical race theory teaching or divisive concepts. It could also put bans on anything that's deemed sexually explicit. So this is the way in which kind of like policy language then influences the books that are being removed. So that's a new trend that we continue to watch, the way in which states are adopting, these types of policies and how districts are then forced to respond to these policies by removing certain types of books off their classroom and school libraries.
How does PEN America collaborate with authors and publishers and other organizations to promote freedom of expression and the importance of unrestricted access to literature?
Yeah, authors and parent groups, students, librarians, publishers. I mean, they're such critical partners in our effort at PEN America. We'll partner with authors and publishers when like a certain individual's work has been banned, and we've had a lot of great success when authors step forward and just bring a face to that book to say like, I wrote this book for students, or this book certainly doesn't have any sort of explicit sexual content, and really challenge kind of the removal of that book and name recognition to also elevate what's happening and to raise some awareness more broadly about book bans. So publishers or authors in that sense have been such critical influencers in this work and in resisting book bans. And it's also a lot to ask. I mean, we know that authors, this can be quite overwhelming and quite harmful when their works are banned and censored. We've seen amazing response from publishers in stepping forward and providing a response in solidarity with their authors. Publishers have recently signed on to a freedom to read statement that sort of affirms the principles of the freedom to read. We've seen publishers join with independent booksellers in Texas to push back against state legislation. PEN America also has litigation with Penguin Random House, which is a publisher, to push back against book bans in a Florida school district. So there's lots of different ways that there's this real network of folks that are standing together to defend the freedom to read. So we see this across, again, like sort of parents groups and publishers and authors and incredible student activism, really fighting for the right to read.
What role does PEN America play in defending the First Amendment rights of writers and readers when books come under attack?
That really is our mission, is to defend and celebrate free expression. And in the context of the United States, our best kind of constitutional tool for that is the First Amendment. So the example that I just noted with Penguin Random House is PEN America, Penguin Random House, 5 authors who were banned in a particular school district, as well as parents from that school district, came together to put forth a lawsuit against that public school that had been removing books. We saw that the way that the books were removed were overwhelmingly and disproportionately targeting books by authors of color and LGBTQ plus authors. So PEN America filed suit as, to say that this removal of books in these ways is unconstitutional. It violates the First Amendment, and it also violates the 14th Amendment, our due process clause. Our mission is really to ensure that the freedom to read is maintained, as is, free speech and all the different ways in which free speech shows up in our society. But particularly in public schools, we see it as kind of challenging, really defending the freedom to read and the freedom to think for students in schools.
Looking ahead, what are PEN America's future plans and aspirations in the fight against banned books for the preservation of literary freedom?
Great question. So looking ahead, PEN America has almost like a 4-part strategy in how we're thinking about pushing back against book bans. Part of this is our research. So we track individual instances of school book bans. This is an immense undertaking. It's a rigorous sort of data collection process that we undergo that tracks media reports and district websites and school board minutes, and has access to public records requests that can identify, what books are being removed across school districts nationwide. That research really helps us sort of inform a national discourse on the state of book bans, on the way in which one's freedom to read is being infringed for students in our public schools across the country. So that's a critical piece of how we approach this work. We also do a lot of work around communication. So when we have this report, we do our best to get it out there. We spend a lot of time on webinars or speaking to folks just like you to say, this is something that is happening. This has real implications for young people across the nation. And we need to, come together to bring awareness to this issue, and then to also really resist and oppose efforts to ban books in public schools. So that's two kind of critical pieces. And then we also, support many groups nationwide in their local organizing and advocacy. So we offer, a little bit of financial support where we can. We offer some operational support. And then we, really our goal is to kind of amplify and uplift a lot of the work that's happening. We have different chapters. PEN America has chapter cities across the country that are engaged in efforts to resist book bans. We also have some amazing partners and coalitions that we are a part of, including the Let Utah Reads Coalition. There's a Texas Freedom to Read working group that we are a part of. The Unite Against Book Ban Coalition. So there's lots of ways that, groups across the country are banding together. Both prevent more books from being pulled and banned from public schools, but then also the counter effort is really to bring those books back, fight for diverse and representative and celebratory books that are available to students in schools everywhere as well.
Kasey, as our conversation draws to a close, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude for your valuable contribution to this interview. I've learned so much about Pen America, and it's been an enlightening discussion. Thank you so much for your valuable time.
Christopher, really thank you. I mean, I think your platform and your voice and the way you're bringing light to this issue is just so important. So I'm happy we were able to talk, and I enjoyed watching all the other interviewees that came before me on your channel. So really thank you for holding the space and for taking up this cause.
I'm grateful for your kind words. Thank you.
Problem.
Have a wonderful day.
All right. Thanks so much. Yeah. Good luck with everything. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.